Number 3 at live streaming this. Had a bit of technical issues. Anyway, on this video I'm going to be going through how to work with two separate workbooks where you are looking for data in one workbook in the other workbook. So basically when I'm capturing data, I want to make sure that data, if it exists in the other sheet, I want to bring it through to the new sheet or the new workbook, so I don't have to repeat entering in data or anything along those lines. So step 1, I've set up just two basic workbooks here, workbook A and workbook B, and I've opened up both of them so I can easily switch between them. You'll see that in workbook A, I just have some random example data there, very small data set. This could go on, I'll show you how to work with it as many as you want. It can go up to 1 million something. And I'll set it up so you can work with something that large. And then workbook B is where I'm going to be entering new data, and I would want to check if it doesn't exist. If it exists in workbook A, I don't want to have to re-enter in all the data. But yeah, so to start off with, you would look at what uniquely identifies each record. In that case, it's the ID. The ID uniquely identifies it. So we would have to enter the ID in here. But if the ID matches, for example, 22 and 83 matches, so we would want to pull through the data here. To start off with, I'm just going to move everything across, and I'm going to do the calculations a bit more individually before I do them grouped in one, so you can understand the full building blocks of this solution. So the first step that we are going to do is we're going to do a CountIf. Now in a CountIf, you're just basically testing the number of instances of a value in another area. So to do this, I'm going to use the fx function for here. When I combine them, I'll just do the calculation in the cell. You can choose whichever way you feel more comfortable with. But in this case, we're going to do go to the function block just so we can see what the calculation is composed of. And we're going to do a CountIf. And in the CountIf, we're going to first look at the range. Now, the range is where you are looking for the value. So in this case, we're not looking for it inside workbook B, we are looking for it in workbook A. So we literally just, in our taskbar at the bottom, we go across to workbook A, or the workbook that you're looking at, and you select the column where you will find the value you're looking for. And we, in this case, we're wanting to count the ID. Now, you could, if you just select the range here, that's fine. But when you enter another row in value 6, another row in value 7, up down to whatever, it will not work. Whereas if you select the whole of column B, it means that no matter how much data you enter, it will pick that up in this calculation. So you don't have to go back and redo this every single time. It's a much preferred way if you ask me. Alright, so then after we've got that, we've set up where we are looking for it. The next is the criteria. The criteria is we are looking for the value 22. So now if you do that and you click OK, you'll see it will show value 1. Now, because I used the whole of column B, I do not have to do absolute cell referencing. You'll see it put $ in front of B there, and that's just to show that it will not change the range when you drag it down. But because it's a whole column B or drag it around, it doesn't matter. When I drag it down, it will be fine. So now you'll see there is 1 ID 22 0 0 0 1. So 822 and 83 exists in workbook A, and we can check that that does exist. So when it is 1 and when it is 0. So now, what if I want to do a test to check if it does exist? I want to do something, and if not, I want to do something else. So on that case, we could do an if statement. Now, an if statement works slightly different, well, same-ish, but same, but different. So if I do an if statement now, you'll see that now the first thing I've got in my if statement is a logical test. In other words, condition to check whether it is the case. So in this case, I'm going to say if the CountIf value, so if what I've counted is greater than 0, meaning it does exist in the other sheet, I want to display the value yes, it does exist in the other sheet. And if it doesn't exist in the other sheet, I want to just display blank. So I can just leave that blank and go OK. Now, it might, if I leave it blank, it might display false there, and that's not what I want. So if I go back into my statement, instead of leaving it blank, I'm just going to put double inverted commas. And what this will do is when it displays, it will just literally leave the cell blank. Now, that's all fair and well, but now what if I want to bring through the name and the address when doing this? So now we need a VLookup. So VLookup will allow me to look for the value 22 and return something on the right of it. Now remember, it has to be on the right of it. So if I do this again now, if I go to my function and we do a VLookup, so I'm going to type in VLookup, I'm going to rename the field, sorry, before I do this, I'm going to rename the field here VLookup just so that on the video you can see what it's going to do. And in this case, I'm going to VLookup the name. And in this case, I would And this one I'd want to VLookup the address. I can spell it, probably can't spell it, anyway, whatever. Alright, now on this case I'm going to be going I forgot what I was doing. Yeah, VLookup. Right. So now we're going to go and we're going to say VLookup. We're going to go, and you'll see the function VLookup is available there. Now VLookup will look for a value and return something to the right of it. The first value is what am I looking at? In this case, I'm going to look up the value 22. So if I'm looking up the value 22, and where am I going to look it up from? Now in this case we are looking up the value from another workbook, so we'll select the other workbook. Now the first column you must select is a column where the value that you're looking for would exist, if it exists. So in this case I wouldn't choose A, I would choose B. So this is column 1, and you would highlight through. Again, I'm not just selecting the cell range, because if I add more data I want to include it as well. So I'm going to say column 1, 2, 3. I'm going to select all columns here, and I'll explain why a little later. So I'm going to choose all columns here, and then I'm going to say out of those columns that I've selected. Now remember, column 1 is the first one we chose, which was the ID. It then had the name, it then had the address. So in this case I'm wanting number 2 to be selected, and on the last one here it's just got to do with if you want an exact match or a approximate match, meaning that the closest match to it will be returned. So if you're looking for something where it's the closest to something, you would leave it blank or just put there true. Otherwise, in this case, we want exact, so we would say false. So we go OK, and then you'll see there it goes in Seeker. And if I drag down, these ones will be not applicable, but then Frank would pull through. Now this calculation I can drag cross, but now notice that in my VLookup, my A2 is not anchored or absolute cell referenced. So when I drag it across, it will not work, even though he does exist. So what you would do is you would make sure in your VLookup, any cell that you do not want to move, and this goes with any calculation, any cells you do not want to move, you should always, just move this thing, any cells you do not want to move, you will always absolute cell reference, which means you'll press F4. So if you do not want it to move, you press F4, and that will put anchors on it or dollar signs, so it will not move it. So if I go OK here, and now I drag it across, you'll see it will work. It's now got in Seeker as well, but we don't want in Seeker on this one, so we'll change the column index number that we're looking up. We're no longer looking at column 2, we're looking at column 3, and then you'll see that will pull it through. Now if I drag that down, it'll be not applicable. That's a good lesson actually. I like this. On this note, when I put in my absolute cell referencing, you'll see there's a dollar sign in front of the A and a dollar sign in front of the 2, meaning that my column is locked and my row is locked. So to unlock my row, I literally just get rid of the dollar sign in front of the 2, and that means my columns are locked, so I'll always be in column A, but not always in row 2. Meaning when I drag it across, I do want, did I get it the wrong way around? Looks like I did. So I do want A2, I to change A2 to, A2 should move to, should stay on A2. Okay, so now it says in Seeker, and then I would say I want to change the value to 3, so Bacon Village. But now, because of my cell referencing where I've locked the column but not the row, it will be there, and I drag down, and then Devin Franklin, and so forth. So now it works correctly. Now, all of this is a little bit elongated. It has got the values we want, but we want to combine it so that it's either blank or it's got the values in it. So now I'm just going to do it as if it is. So we'll have name and we'll have address here. So we'll pretend that these don't exist here. So I'm going to hide these for now. I'm going to leave them available so we can look at them later. But we're going to combine them into one calculation now. So now what I'm going to do is, first thing I want to do is I'm going to say equals if, brackets, I'm going to do the condition, and I'm going to say if CountIf, open brackets, the range from column A, table, workbook A, CountIf, that is semicolon, the criteria is next, is, the criteria should be that it is 22, and we would need to F4 that reference, F4 that reference, F4 that reference. We want the column to stay the same, but we do not want the row to stay the same. So if that CountIf is equal to A2, so in other words, if I find that ID in there, so that was the CountIf function that I've done, and I've said that if that is greater than 0, so I'm basically combining the calculations. So I've done the if statement, I've done the CountIf inside here. I've said if the CountIf calculation that I showed you earlier is greater than 0, that means that it does exist. So the value is true, meaning I must now VLookup. So if it is there, I will VLookup, and now I'm doing my VLookup function. Lookup value again is A2. Again, I press F4, F4, F4. I only want the column not to change, I do want the row to change. I then go semicolon table array that I'm looking at. This is from workbook A. I go ID, name, address. I then would, that is the rows that I'm looking for, yes, semicolon. The column index number that I want here is 2, and I want it to be exact, so I want it to be false. Close brackets, semicolon. Now it's the value if it's false. So that's the value if it's true, I do a VLookup. If it is false, I just want a blank cell, close brackets, enter. So you'll see now it says in Seeker, when I drag it all the way down, it will say Frank. And when I drag it across one cell, it'll still say in Seeker, so I change this to 3, which will be Breaking Village. I drag it down and we'll put the values in. So now what we've got here, I've combined the calculations all into one calculation. Let me actually show you the calculations in a bit larger screen, so I can show you it broken up a bit more. So if we look at this in a bit more detail, you'll see I've got an if statement, and you'll see that it does pair up the open and close brackets. So here I'm doing a CountIf, so I'm checking if it's greater than 0. So if the CountIf, which will determine how many of them exist in the other row, and if that is greater than 0. So that is the if statement. If it is greater than, I'm doing a true condition where I'm going VLookup the value exactly, which we did in the other one, and then I'm saying if it is not equal to that blank cell. So then you'll see that this is now going to display the answer all in one column. We don't have to worry about having all those other sheets there. But as I say, these calculations here is the broken up version of this done in a single individual calculation over here. Cool. I hope this video has helped you with VLookups and with how to work with two different workbooks.